So, the first reading today, it's the story of what we'd call in English a quest. A quest. This is someone going on a heroic journey, looking for something, but not just anything, your lost keys, looking for something deep and meaningful and life-changing. This is going back to Homer, isn't it, in Greek literature? This is Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. This is Frodo in Lord of the Rings. This is Richard Dreyfuss in the third greatest film of all time. Pause. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Literally looking for... People are laughing there, that's not appropriate. Laughing at my film tastes. The quest, the heroic journey. Lots of examples in the Bible. And in fact, it's one part of our religious experience, an important part, or it should be. Today, it's the prophet Elijah. We didn't hear this, but he's had 40 days on a quest, journeying through the wilderness, to arrive today at Mount Horeb, Mount Sinai. What is he expecting when he gets there? What's he expecting? Well, he's an Old Testament prophet. He knows about Moses' encounter with God on the mountain. He expects signs of what we call a theophany. A theophany, a divine manifestation in the Old Testament tradition, which would be a violent wind, an earthquake, a fire, high drama on the mountain in the wilderness. God showing his might and his power. But as we heard, for Elijah, God is not in the wind, in the earthquake, in the fire. He is, we heard, in the gentle breeze, as the Jerusalem Bible translates it, which we heard in the liturgy just now, or as another translation beautifully translates it, he is in the sound of sheer silence. The sound of sheer silence that enveloped the mountain and called to Elijah at the front of the cave. That's the Old Testament reading today. What's it saying to us? Well, first, that we need to be on a quest. Are we searching for God? Simple little question to take home with us today. Are we looking for him? Are we journeying? Or are we stuck? Are we interested in him enough to go looking for him? And are we prepared for the costs of that journey? Thinking of what Elijah left behind, and Dorothy and Richard Dreyfuss and all the others. A heroic journey. It should excite us and fire us up. It should slightly terrify us as well. But we need to be on a quest. And secondly, for Elijah, saying to us, I think, that God won't always speak to us in the way that we expect or want. He speaks here in silence, in the absence of speech. We need sometimes a different kind of listening, of attuning. We're listening out for one thing. You know when you're in a room and there's 20 people speaking and you can focus on one voice, can't you? It's incredible, the human mind. And you kind of screen out the others. But what if we're listening to the wrong voice and we need to retune, fine-tune? We do need a deeper discernment and listening, like Elijah had to learn. In the spiritual tradition, this is often called recollection. I remember my spiritual director saying to me, when I was a new priest, talking to him about the experience of hearing confessions, not the confessions themselves, but the experience of it, and Father James saying to me, Stephen, you need to listen to people with a third ear. You need to listen with a third ear. Not just the sounds or the words or what's going in to your ears left and right, but what is their heart saying? And what is your heart hearing their heart say? And that's true for God as much as for other people. So, quest. We need to be heroes. We need to be on a heroic quest. Okay. The Gospel reading, however, big however, is about non-heroes who are not on a quest. It's about the disciples, Peter at the head, stuck on a boat in a terrible storm. They are not at all interested in the spiritual journey. They just want to survive. They're frightened. Their lives have become very narrow. There's no heroism here. Do you see why this is pretty good for us? Because often we don't feel like Frodo or Elijah. We just feel rubbish or boring. Yeah. The non-quest, non-heroic spiritual life. That's what the Gospel's about, and it's important for that reason. You've heard the story. They're on the boat. There's no Jesus. He's up in the mountains. There's a terrible storm. And in the middle of this terror, this non-quest, Jesus appears, walking on the water. He calms their fears. He calls to Peter, and he saves him from sinking into the waves. There are so many lessons for us here, and I'd really like you to take this Gospel reading home. You can't because we haven't photocopied it this week, but look it up. Look it up when you get home and just see that there is a picture of the spiritual life here for non-heroes. What's going on? Well, that he is with us in the midst of our lives, often and especially in the very places where we're not expecting it. When we are not interested in him, he is interested in us. The storm in the Bible is so symbolic. It's about our fears, our disasters, our difficulties, or our sheer boredomness. He is there, present, walking on the water of the storm, coming towards us. And our reaction when we notice him, again, this is very human. It's not, "Oh, you are the Son of God, save me." Peter's reaction at the beginning is just fear. They're afraid because of the storm, and now they're afraid because Jesus has turned up. He's only made it worse. It's common. It's what I said last week, isn't it? About the awe, the awesomeness, the awe-inspiringness that happens when we come face to face with the divine. It attracts us, but it unsettles us as well. Peter's reaction to this, when he's taken it in and calmed down a little bit, it is utterly typical Peter. From the heart, he says, "Tell me to come to you across the water." And notice, he's not just saying, "Lord, I want to be with you." That's very holy. He's saying, "Lord, I'd quite like to do what you're doing as well." Yes? I'd like some of that. This is very interesting. I've not seen anyone walk on the water before. I can come and be with you, but maybe I could walk on the water as well on the way. It's a wonderful mixture, typical of Peter, of impulsiveness, arrogance, pride, excitement, curiosity, love. But the heart of his desire actually is something very holy. It's the desire to be with Jesus and to be like Jesus. That's pretty much Christianity, isn't it? To be with Jesus, and even that slightly ambiguous, prideful desire to walk on the water, it's a desire to be like Jesus. To do what he's doing, to be amazed at what he does and think, maybe I could do this as well. That's a holy desire. The number of times Jesus called people to follow him. Yes, to take up his cross, but to do what he does. Because that's our vocation as Christians, partly. So that's something to notice and learn from. Do we have those holy desires? And then Jesus responds, yes, come to me. Step out, even in the storm. You see, step out even in the storm. Peter doesn't wait for the perfect time. He just does it. How often have you noticed something good that you could do? Or had a holy inspiration from the Holy Spirit, a little nudge. What about this? What about that? Had you thought of this? Maybe you could do this. Maybe you should do this. And we know it's good, but we think, oh, it's not quite the right time. Yeah. The circumstances are not quite perfect for me to do this good thing yet. I'm not perfect. The situation isn't quite right. The fact that things are not perfect shouldn't stop us doing good things. That's the simple message from Peter stepping out. It's better to do good things imperfectly than not do them all. That phrase I quote about once every 3 months in sermons, yes? The perfect is the enemy of the good. The perfect is the enemy of the good. And because Peter knows that, he walks out, he succeeds, he panics, he doubts, he fails. He starts thinking, it's okay to fail. This is not management consultant, self-improvement, bookshop stuff. This is the Bible. It is okay to fail, because in the middle of that failure, Peter says, for the first time, actually, it's taken a long time, Lord, save me. And Jesus reaches out his hand and takes Peter by the hand. The deepest call of faith from Peter and the closest intimacy with Jesus, the hand, reaching out to touch the hand, it comes in the middle of failure. Isn't that interesting? And for us not to be overwhelmed by our difficulties and failures, because it's just then that we're tempted to think, oh, God has abandoned me. He doesn't know what he's doing. Is he really there? And there's this very common paradox in the scriptures and in the spiritual life, that it's in the middle of the failure, of Elijah's silence on the mountain, of Peter sinking, he's messed up, it's right then that he can honestly say, Lord, save me, and Jesus can reach out to help him. Beautiful story. Jesus coming to us in the middle of the storm, and us coming to be with him, to be like him, even in our weakness and difficulties. I'll just give you one little sweet example of this, just because it was last night. So I went to Night Fever down at St Patrick's, Soho. You know, this is when they opened the church on a Saturday night. It's Soho, it's clubland, it's theatre land. No one's very interested in religion at that time, but the church is open and people are out on the streets carrying lanterns. It's beautiful, in the darkness, inviting people simply to come into the church and look around, and if they want, to light a candle. That's it. No pressure, no heavy evangelization, but just come in and experience the beauty of the church and the holiness of that place, and, perhaps unknown to them, the holiness of Jesus present there in the Blessed Sacrament. So, do you see, it's a bit like it's the presence of Jesus in the storm of the modern world, the storm of central London, when people are not expecting to meet him. So that itself, I think, is a nice little icon of the gospel, just coincidentally. But the little anecdote is this. Right at the end, I was there with Father Federico and Father Elijah, and as we were leaving, we'd heard confessions for the evening. So I had my bag over my back, over my shoulder, and a young woman came in with a lantern, and behind her, this really tough guy. I mean, a young, tough guy, not just tattoos, but tattoos on his neck. You know, that's kind of 9 out of 10 toughness in my book. Yeah? And he's looking round a bit nervous, and what am I doing here? But he's with her, he's walking behind. She walks down the aisle, And he just catches her and looks at the back row of the church. Yeah. And he nods to her and he says, "I'm sitting here at the back row, I'm not coming any further." Yeah. And this young woman, she turns round to this tough guy and she wags her finger like this. She says, "No, no, no, you're coming here." And she points to the front of the church. And he's not used to being spoken like this, I think. And he just pauses for a minute and he walks down the aisle and he follows her. That's it. That's the story. But do you see how sweet it is, how funny, but how profound? There is he in this world. I'm not judging him. I don't know, he might have been a saint or a missionary for all I know, but there is he, from the outside, the most unlikely character in the most unlikely world, coming into the church to meet the Lord. And then when he doesn't want to walk any further, this icon of Jesus, this young missionary, jokes, teases, provokes, nags, prods him and says, "No, come further. Come to meet the Lord." She has the courage to invite him, and he has the courage and the humility to say yes. What a lovely example yesterday of what happened to St. Peter in the Gospel today.